Many people are frustrated with the recent content releases and the gameplay changes in regards to the meta, and also just in general the dev sort of response and interaction with the community regarding other issues. This has led me to think, is Dead by Daylight in danger of dying, and is there a possibility that in the near future, if behaviour continue on this path, we won't have Dead by Daylight in the same vein that it could be and should be? I personally cannot remember when this game was in this bad of a state for a long time, and it may actually be the worst state of which I have been playing the game since I started playing in 2018. Now, let's look at the reasons for this and why sort of Dead by Daylight is struggling at the minute and in a shit period and a shit patch. I think this comes down to a couple of reasons, but there are two or three really big changes and reasons that I think have contributed to this. The first reason that Dead by Daylight is in this state is because of the recent content releases. Now, since Project W in late August, we've had 2 original chapters back to back since in the past 6 months. Now, that's not to say that original chapters are worse than licensed chapters and are not good enough for the standard of the game. Not at all. It's just that the releases that Behaviour have had in mind and released have not been up to scratch. The Knight is an interesting idea, but it's just really poorly executed by the devs. Gameplay wise, he's too boring to play and he can only really hold a 3-gen, which means he's just boring, and the actual amount of bugs that released with him in the patch that came out with his chapter, there was too many of them, so the release was just not smooth. It was just appeared rushed, unprofessional, and that sort of just makes your game less interesting to players, and players that are just veteran players as well, because they want to see fresh content that's different to what they've seen. And when they're getting a killer that can just zone people with their guards and just camp gens, it doesn't really entice them to want to play the game any further. And then recently we've had arguably a just as bad or even worse chapter in the Tools of Torment chapter, of which we got the Skull Merchant. Now, the Skull Merchant is a big letdown compared to what we actually received in the teaser trailer, where everybody sort of assumed there would be a cyborg coming into the game, which would be a very cool concept. Instead, what we got was this woman with a robotic sort of mask on her face, and with a power to really just put drones around and just basically play a similar way to the Knight, in which just zone people and just camp gens. Now, both of these killers were completely underwhelming and not up to the standard of the game. When you think of what Behavior done in the past, and really that this game is meant to be the star game in this horror genre of the industry, you're expecting better chapters. It doesn't matter if they're original or licensed, because Behavior have done some great original chapters before, like The Dredge, but it's not to be at the minute. The chapters are not working. Nothing's really good enough for the game. The content is just lackluster. The gameplay as well, a lot of people moan about the meta being eruption, but it doesn't matter really how many times you want to change the meta. The meta and the way that the gameplay is designed at the minute is basically killers are going to bring gem regression perks, survivors are going to bring exhaustion perks and gem progress perks, and you're just going to have long matches most of the time where it's just drawn out doing gens and stopping gens, and then the same sort of cycle and patterns of gameplay are going to happen too often, and this is not good for the game, because obviously you're going into every match, and in Dead by Daylight, with the way that the game is designed, 4v1, you complete 5 gens to get out, do the objective, and then you escape. You need to have this sort of fresh feel to every single match, and that's not how it feels playing Dead by Daylight at the minute. It feels just sort of the same. Doesn't matter really what killer you go as or anything, or what killer you even go against. There may be slight differences, but most of my matches when I play just feel the same. It just feels boring, and then within about 3 or 4 matches I'm bored, and then I want to turn the game off. A counter argument to maybe why Dead by Daylight is not dying would be that people would say, well, the game still has over about 30,000 average players on Steam, and if you're taking all consoles and everything else that you can play the game on, you're probably thinking in the range of about maybe 60,000 players on average who are currently playing the game, which is not a bad number and not sort of a number that's alarming for Behavior. But let me tell you why this recent content drought and dilemma is really going to leave Behavior at risk. In life, you don't often get a third chance, but you sometimes get a second, and Behavior are really on their second chance now to prove to the community that they can release good content again for the game. After Project W, everybody was really happy. That was a great chapter. The game was in a really great state. And then the night came. Everybody was completely disappointed when the night came. And then in Behaviour's first chance to really redeem themselves after that chapter, they released the Skull Merchant. And we all know how that went down. So now for the anniversary chapter, arguably the biggest chapter of the year anyway, Behaviour are really on their second and final chance to really sort of release something creative, new, fresh, exciting, makes you want to play the game in basically every single minute. It makes you want to jump on the game and play for hours. They need to design a chapter or get a license in. I don't know what they're planning, but there needs to be something that's really exciting, really just new, different to what we have in this game, not the same sort of boring free gen killer whatever. Because even licenses, you could have Jason Voorhees coming into this game. That would create so much hype. But if you make him a free gen killer, you're going to kill that hype anyway. So you need to make sure that they need to make their gameplay designs for these new chapters on point. Otherwise, they're going to be in a dangerous position because they're losing credibility at the minute through the DDoS attacks. I mean, their statement last night really was a joke about that, regarding that, just saying that they've investigated and they can't see proof of any attacks happening. We know it's going on for a long time in the game, and that's also draws me on to my next point. Behaviour's interaction with the community are too inconsistent about their own game, and this makes you just feel frustrated as a long-time player or even as a new player. If you're going into Dead by Daylight to have fun and you're at risk of your internet literally being attacked while you're playing the game, even through a VPN, unless you're on the Epic Game Store or console, what does that really suggest to you? That suggests to you that this game is not developed well. There's not enough protection. The servers are not secure enough for the game. If you're at risk of being attacked that easily, then it's just, why would you want to play a game in which you're at risk so easily? You're not going to feel safe. And if it happens to you, you're just going to be really frustrated about it. And Behaviour, plenty of people have told Behaviour, added them on Twitter, what have you, whatever, on forums. Behaviour are aware of this issue, but then that statement makes no sense for them to say that they don't think that there is any proof of attacks actually occurring. And it just shows that how out of touch they are with their own community. And that's really just contributing to really the state we're in. The community interaction with the actual devs is fine. It's the devs who actually don't give enough information to the community about why they make changes, about why they make decisions, about why this happens, and why we need more transparency, because otherwise you're going to have more and more players like myself who are just going to get frustrated and actually consider taking long breaks, or even just not even wanting to come back to play the game because of the lack of consistency and transparency in their sort of communication. And you don't want that from a game developer. For your game to be good, you need to have a strong community management team, strong dev team who will interact with the community and explain the decisions of why, because then you can move forward together and then hopefully have better content and better gameplay. Bringing me on to my third and final point about why Dead by Daylight is potentially dying and in a really bad state. This may link under gameplay, but I'm going to say maps. Now, we've had some sort of recent reworks of the maps. Red Forest got changed. Shelter Woods got an update to be the Skull Merchants map. We've had the Borgo come in recently. And just on maps, really, they are too sort of boring to play. And that's maybe a dumb statement. So let me elaborate on that. I feel like when you have a game, you need to have enticing maps. We have a few maps in the game that are actually fun to play. I like a few of the maps, but most of the maps, they're all part of the same realms, most of them, and most of the maps are actually too similar to each other. So even though you can call it Shelter Woods or Suffocation Pit or whatever you want to call it, Cold Tower, most of the maps just feel basically the same apart from the change of one real structure. And you're playing mostly on the same maps or similar maps. It's not fun. It links into what I said earlier. You feel like you're playing the same thing every game, no matter the kill of the map, because the gameplay's so drab itself sometimes. You basically are playing in the same game. You're not finding anything new or exciting that's ticking your brain to actually want to stay on the game in most of your matches. You don't have consistent fun on this game, for me personally. So to fix the maps, you just need to maybe invert the maps, maybe flip them upside down or just whatever, mirror the maps and just release that, because that wouldn't be too difficult to do. But just maybe make the maps more enticing by basically giving the option of playing on sort of maps, the same maps, but just sort of flip them around, make the layout different, make them like upside down, if you will, or just inverted, just to add something new to the game, make it a little bit more fun. Because recent map designs, I mean, just think of the Knights map, it's just so bad. That map is awful. I even forget that it's a map until I actually load onto the game. It's that bad. It's so unmemorable. It's not memorable at all. No one wants to play on a map like that. And the scary thing is that's the recent map that's most recently been developed, like a complete map that's been developed. And if that's the sort of map that you're going to be bringing out to your game, what does that say about your game and the state of your development team? If, you're bringing out the same sort of negative map designs, negative sort of gameplay, and you're not willing to change it. So with these 3 points in mind, I'm quickly going to go over how this can be fixed, and it's an easy fix. So Behaviour really want to up their game and bring it back to that sort of peak 2019 after summer levels, when we had Stranger Things, the Ghostface chapter. The game was in a good state meta-wise compared to what it is now. You basically need to do 3 things. You need to up the game with your content. 1, because obviously content is very important in this game, because the game remains the same most of throughout the year, apart from these little minor tweaks here and there to the gameplay. So every chapter, and we only have 4 chapters per year, so that's basically 3 months without a major sort of interesting change to the game. So every single chapter that comes in now has to be a good chapter. It needs to be sort of fitting into the game, fitting into what the community wants with the game. And these satisfaction surveys that they release with licenses on them and sort of questions about what players want to see, they need to sort of implement actually the results of their survey. I'm not saying you have to go out and get Jason, you have to get Five Nights at Freddy in your game, you have to get Candyman, you have to get Alien, Predator, you have to get Stranger Things back into your game. I'm not saying that at all, but you need to at least get a decent licensing or an interesting license that you can make into a very cool sort of concept gameplay wise to make it fun for the players. And just your general content needs to improve if you want to basically keep your player count consistent for the next few years and even improve it and elevate the game further, because the game's capable of being a better game, bigger game than it is right now. You need to improve the content, so that's number 1. 2 is the gameplay. Now, gameplay, you might say, oh, well, it's too difficult to change the gameplay because the gameplay's been sort of the same for so long, and sort of the way the game is, what the game is about makes the gameplay changes too difficult. But no, I don't think so. I think you can have a gameplay where, certain perks, doesn't matter really how many perks are strong or what perks are strong, but maybe redesign some of your killers, rework the knight a little bit, rework the skull merchant, rework some of your maps as well, because that also contributes to the way that the game is played. The layout of the maps contributes to if you can have a free gem, if you can just basically slug and tunnel and camp, because also if you're having maps with sort of, these small maps, you're easily going to be able to free gen as a knight or whoever you are, or you're going to be able to camp very easily as a bower. And people, have a right to play how they want, but if you're going to play that way, other people will get really frustrated at that, and then not everyone's going to have a great experience on the game themselves, and it just leads to, arguments and toxicity in the community, which can easily be avoided. So maps need to change, need to be reworked, certain killers maybe need to be reworked, certain perks need to be reworked, and then hopefully the game can be in a state where every game is just sort of fresh, new and exciting. So with that, those are really sort of the changes that I think you need to make, and they're quite simple to do. I don't think it's too much work. The game's in a bad spot now, but it's easily fixable. It's not like there's no coming back from this for Dead by Daylight and Behaviour. So yeah, that's my really thoughts on what's going on in Dead by Daylight right now, and I'll catch you in the next one.